Hello, White Sox fans, and welcome in to Sox On Tap. It's your host, Tony Marchese, alongside NWI Steve, as they like to used to call him on the interwebs, even though he's not there anymore. He's here with us, and we're about to break down the opening weekend of Chicago White Sox baseball. Steven, it was a strong start, a weak finish, if you ask me, to this baseball season's opening day series against the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
Of
Steven,
Orange County,
of
of
Orange County,
California, of the
yeah,
Pacific time zone.
that place out there, out west. I know you're a big fan of that area, Steven, and you frequent there all the time, so you know the geographics a little bit better than I do of that part of the country. But Steven, it was a great opening day. I was there in attendance with our guy BZ. We had a couple of other people show up. Patrick Comiskey was there. Shout out Comiskey. Steven, you were not there. It was the end of a streak. What happened?
Sometimes in life, you got to make choices, and you have to prioritize things. And given the state of the White Sox organization, I had to make a decision that I wasn't going to have my my world kind of on opening day revolve around this team, because they don't really deserve it right now. So I spent most of the week in America's Dairyland, hearing tales of oversold Super Bowl tickets and class action lawsuits resulting from it, potential cruise ships being docked, to try to make capacity for some foosball draft coming up in a few weeks, and ultimately laying groundwork for some potentially game-changing deals that, if they come to fruition, would be very fruitful and honestly more beneficial to me in the present and into the future than, being at the ballpark. So sometimes
you did not want to attend Jerry's World on opening day for the first time. How long was the streak before it ended? 17 years?
Yeah.
17-year streak. Wow, that's a shame, but I'm sure you'll be back at the ballpark soon enough. It was interesting. There was a lot of talk going into this one as to whether or not this stadium was going to be as packed as it normally is on opening day. I will say it was a little bit of a lighter crowd, but I was somewhat impressed by the size of the crowd there at the ballpark at 35th and Shields on Thursday afternoon, Steve. I discovered Lot L for the first time. Didn't know this lot existed. Feels like it's about a mile away from the ballpark. Parked there. We had a little bit of a tailgate. Brought some White Castles. I know you missed out on the White Castles, Steven. It was a good time. And then the ball game itself didn't disappoint by any stretch of the imagination. It was a rare White Sox winner. We don't get those very often. If you follow the White Sox, it's not often that you get to go down to the ballpark and see a win. I think I'm 4 for 4 now in my last 4, Steve. So that's something that I'm tracking now as we go through this season. But strong start to the 2025 125th year anniversary season for the White Sox. I know you got to take in some of the ball game. What were your initial takeaways from this one, Steven?
Well, let me answer that question by posing one of my own. Would you go as far as to say they hashtag set the tone?
I think they did, at least on Thursday. I think they did. I'm not positive because what's transpired since then has been something that's left a lot to be desired, especially on the offensive side of baseball. But as you have frequently said on this show, ball go far, team go far. White Sox out-homered the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. I'll let you finish the rest of the geography there if you want to. But they out-homered their opponents, and they took home a victory. And I'd say that was setting the tone. I don't know about you.
Yeah, when I was able to finally get home and watch the game right there and just, general observations of it. I mean, it was a pretty clean, crisp ball game that they played. They went out there offensively, and Austin Slater, in that second inning, going and getting them on the board early with the long ball and them adding 2 more in that inning, putting up a crooked number. I love crooked numbers. Me and
You
the
do. I
Hawkaroo.
do as well.
Me and the
I do
Hawkaroo,
as
we
well.
got that common. We love crooked numbers. So, to see them go out there and do that and actually give themselves a lead was pretty encouraging. And then Sean Burke went out there and he did the one of the things that I have talked about and I've written about of paramount importance for him. He didn't walk anybody. Now we all know that this Angels team, they're not good offensively. So we have to kind of issue a little bit of a caveat when we talk about the pitching performances this weekend here. This is not a good offensive club. And Sean Burke obviously had some of the opening day jitters there, first time being on an opening day roster, making that opening day start. That's a big deal. Whether you're in the major leagues or at lower levels, I remember times being in high school, pitching at a low level, and you always are amped up a little bit more that first game of the season right there. It is obviously going to be amplified when you're playing in front of tens of thousands of people and you've got 3 decks and you've got national media there and people all across the country and all across the world have the ability to be able to watch your performance. So there's going to be adrenaline there. He was able to work through that ultimately, give them 6 quality innings, didn't issue any free passes, wiggled himself out of a couple of jams. After that second inning, seemed like he really settled down and then was able to just go out there and do the job. He was able to induce a lot of soft contact there those last few innings. So all in all, that was a really positive performance from him. And, one of the things that I know you and I talked later on that night, one of the big positives and one of the differences from what took place on that day versus what we saw so much of probably even just the last 2 years, but obviously last year certainly being one of them. That 8th inning when they get into a jam and Mike Clevenger comes in, so many times a year ago, you just have that thought of like, okay, well, this is where the wheels come off. You got 2 runners on and Mike Trout coming up. Clevenger pitches around him and Jorge Soler, a guy that does have light tower power. I mean, we've seen it. And he goes and he gets out of the inning. So that's one thing right there. Getting out of a tight jam in a situation when a year ago, more oftentimes than not, this team wouldn't be able to do that. But then what they did in the top half of that inning was something that impressed me. The fact that they were able to go and put up another crooked number, put up a 5 spot in that top of the inning. They were able to go slam the door in that 8th, keep the Angels rally at bay, and then add on and really put that game away. We didn't see that kind of stuff a year ago. So a nice way to get the season started right there. Hopefully building some positive vibes and some positive momentum and maybe just seeing, hey, maybe this year is going to be a little bit different. Maybe the vibes are a little bit different. The mindset of this team and this group, they're trying to put all that bullshit from 2024 behind them. So that was really nice to see.
It was. I agree with your assessment on this. Being in the ballpark and just having an opening day win after such a horrible season last year was definitely a good feeling. I think people left pretty happy. Um, at least I did. It was good to see that. Especially that 5 spot. We talked about crooked numbers. That was such a pleasant surprise. I think you nailed that. Um, More than that, though, just the uncertainty of what Burke was going to be able to give you in this game, too, Stephen. I thought it was pivotal early in the first inning, working around that jam and getting out of it. Sort of, I think, calmed the nerves a little bit. He sort of went not on cruise control. There were still a couple of times where there were runners on the base paths and things could have gotten ugly. But they played solid defense. The outfield defense was noticeably better than it has been in the past. I think we can look at who was in the game on Thursday versus
Who
some other things.
wasn't?
And who wasn't. So there's some stuff there to look at. I liked the way that they lined this one up. I questioned everything entering, and I left pleasantly surprised. Didn't expect Miggy Vargas leading off in the best shape of his life. And, he does get 2 hits in that game, drives in 2 runs, scores 1 himself. That was a positive. There were a couple of positive takeaways. And that was not something that I was expecting because I was full doom and gloom, even on the drive up to the ballpark, saying this is going to probably be a shellacking and it's going to get ugly. A couple of other notable things to mention from this ball game. Tim Anderson and Yohan Moncada made their return to 35th and Shields. Tim Anderson received multiple standing ovations, whereas Yohan Moncada was booed and then was subsequently booed throughout the weekend. Steven, are you shocked by those fan reactions for two pieces of what was Rebuild 2.0 in their homecoming?
I'm really not. I feel like there probably are people out there questioning as to why Tim Anderson got a standing ovation. The fact of the matter is that when this team was at their zenith during Rebuild 2.0, if you can even call it that, he was really the catalyst for them offensively. We
The
had all
straw
the
that stirs the
numbers.
drink.
He was
That's what
that
he was called.
he was that guy, and we would see the graphics all the time about when he was in the lineup, what their record was as a team, what their offensive production was. He was the catalyst to that. He's a guy that, did win a batting title. And I know in the year of our Lord 2025, batting average is not something that is really a great measure of overall offensive performance and things. But, anytime that the White Sox have a player that wins a notable category like that, it is something that, should be respected and praised. And he was here, and he was a good player for a period of time. The precipitous decline that happened following the groin injury and the hand injury in 2022, and then all of the off the field stuff that took place, I've struggled to remember a quicker fall from grace within the White Sox organization than with Tim Anderson. So I can't say I'm surprised to see that he did, get a standing ovation. And at the same time, I'm not surprised that Yohan Moncada was booed mercilessly. This is a guy that was the centerpiece of the first trade of Rebuild 2.0. And he was traded for a guy that was on a Hall of Fame trajectory and a guy that, I'm going to stick to my position on this, is the greatest pitcher in White Sox history. And so he did not live up to those expectations. And one thing we know about this fan base is when you come in with high expectations and you don't live up to them, you can only exacerbate that by a perceived lack of caring and a perceived lack of effort. And that was something that was pretty common with Yohan Moncada during his tenure. I hate to kind of go down that path of questioning guys' motivations and questioning guys' desire and how hard they're really working. It just aesthetically, it was very easy to see why people would have that perception of him. So I'm not surprised at all that his reaction was not a warm one.
I'm not shocked by either of these either. I thought that the Tim Anderson one could have gone either way. I was curious to see what that reception was going to be, just due to that fall from grace that you sort of mentioned there. And then, there was all sorts of, the I hate this place stuff from our guy Matthew Crawford and some of the other things that took place towards the end of Tim Anderson's tenure here definitely led to at least me to question what that reception was going to be like. On the Moncada side, I think you summed that up pretty perfectly. I know there's a lot of people who are shocked. Even our guy, Matt Redacted, was in here. Disappointed by it. Moncada was failed by this org, not the other way around. I think that that's somewhat up for debate, Steve. I don't know if it's as black and white one way or the other, but for all intents and purposes, there was a large segment of this fan base that did question some of the work ethic that was taking place there. And maybe it wasn't even just work ethic, some of the long injury stuff. But there was off the field stuff with Yohan Moncada too that sort of cropped up. And it just didn't seem like he ever really lived up to, as you said, those high expectations when he came in. And this is something I wrote about a while back and how he was portrayed when he came over before he even joined the White Sox. He was with the Boston Red Sox organization as one of the youngest phenoms and someone that was going to, change the face of the sport and be, just a force to be reckoned with. And that never really happened. He turned into a pretty good ball player, but no one that was, feared in the middle of that lineup the way that I think most White Sox fans expected him to be. And I'm sure that, you can go back and listen to our talks in the about Rebuild 2.0 and everything we did 2 winters ago now at this point. But It was interesting to see how those boos continued through the weekend, and we'll get into game two here. He ends up becoming the hero in this one, driving in the only run in a 1-0 Angels victory on Saturday. Steven, any takeaways from Saturday's baseball game?
My biggest takeaway was Jonathan Cannon. So again, as I talked about in my little intro here, positive outcome from Cannon being able to go 6 innings of no run ball. Very labor intensive first inning through, I think it was 32, 33 pitches. Taylor Ward had, I think it was an 11 or 12 pitch at bat to lead off the game. I think he had 9 foul balls during the course of that plate appearances. So he really had to fight to get through that first inning. And then same thing in the second, and then really settled down after that. And I kind of dug into some of the data here this morning, looking at the pitch mix, because I don't know if people are aware of this on a little website known as ontapsportsnet.com. I wrote a few words about Jonathan Cannon this winter. I don't know if people, were sick of seeing that kind of stuff.
You did write a couple 2-3 words about Jonathan Cannon.
So I was curious to see what happened with the pitch mix on that. We did see a little bit of an increase in the cutter usage, pretty heavy sinker reliance again on it. And there were good outcomes with the sinker, which is pretty atypical from what we saw during 2024. The four-seam fastball is still playing well for him. And I still am a little bit perplexed as to why that is a pitch that is not used more. But the biggest thing that I saw was the changeup. And, that was something that was talked about with Brian Bannister and needing to find a way to keep left-handed hitters honest and be able to get them off of his sinker. He threw some really nasty changes that had good downward bite on them. So hopefully that's something that he can continue to utilize to keep those left-handed hitters honest and keep them off of his sinker. That's just going to help to lead to better outcomes. The other thing, though, is he can't walk guys. The 3 walks in the 6 innings, that's not going to work ultimately against an offense that is better than that of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, of Orange County, of California, of the Pacific time zone.
So you were overall impressed with Jonathan Cannon's body.
I think impressed is probably too strong of a word. I would say
you were satisfied. Were you satisfied?
I'm satisfied. I would say is a good word. There were positive things to take from it. He was able to get 5 strikeouts in the 6 innings, so we did see a little bit more of the swing and miss. Did
you want a little more length on that start? Is my question.
No, I think 6 innings is about right.
Well, he went 5.
I thought he went 6.
I've got the box up right here. 5 innings, 4 hits, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. He did get himself into a bit of an early jam. Not really a jam, but more of just elevated pitch counts there.
Yeah.
I believe he was at 44 through 2, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And then he was a benefactor of a couple of double plays there yesterday that, they were turning 2 all weekend. I know you're a big fan of the old rack 'em up. And the Sox did that very well for Jonathan Cannon over the weekend.
Yeah. And that's what he's going to have to do. But again, I would like to see a little bit more swing and miss out of him. How he's able to do that against a better, more competent offense is going to really be the challenge. And one of the things I talked about in my preseason, kind of preview article for the team is that I do anticipate there being ebbs and flows with this young pitching staff, seeing some struggles go along the way here. So, making kind of through the rotation this first turn, things have been positive so far. There's good things to build on from it here, but I think we also need to just temper the enthusiasm just a little bit.
I'm sure you're going to have more words on Jonathan Cannon as the season
maybe
goes
at
along.
some point.
He seems to be one of the top developmental targets that's worth writing about within this White Sox rotation at the moment. We'll turn this over to today's ball game in just a minute, but I wanted to comment on the lack of offense after the 8-run outburst on Thursday.
They should have saved some.
They should have saved some runs, Steven. You know this as well as anybody else who follows baseball. You got to save some runs sometimes. They didn't need all 8. On Thursday, they probably only needed maybe, 2-3 runs, make it comfortable there on Thursday. And then, they could have saved some of those and packed them on both well, you could say for today too, there was enough offense to go around there on Thursday, and nothing here. Um, Luis Robert really was sort of just not good, for lack of a better term. It was ugly at the plate for Luis Robert. He did strike out twice, went 0 for 4. You did see Benintendi get on base twice via the walk, Matt Dice twice via the walk. And then there really wasn't a whole lot extra going on there. But Brooks Baldwin did muster a hit, as did Benintendi. However, the rest of the lineup was just the bats went silent. I hope that's not a trend, although I feel like it's probably going to be a trend this year with this team. Very streaky, hot, cold offense with more cold than hot, Steve. Um, how many times are we going to talk about just putrid offensive showings from this lineup?
Well, one of the problems and one of the things that we've talked about for several years on this show at this point is just the lack of an offensive approach and this team's inability to work counts consistently and draw walks. So, as our friend Matt Redacted here is saying, they swing at everything. Um, guys like Josh Rojas and Mike Talkman, guys who have a pretty well defined plate approach and are pretty astute at being able to draw free passes, get themselves into quality hitters counts, while neither is particularly prolific from a power production standpoint, they do get on base. So when you have a couple of those guys like that that are out of the lineup that you were looking at, and probably penciling into more everyday roles, not being there, things like this are going to happen. And so, Jacob Amaya is not in the major leagues because of his bat. I think we can all agree with that at this point. Lenine Sosa is not someone that is ever going to draw walks with regularity. So until they have more guys in the lineup that are able to draw walks consistently, because look, given the state of pitching today, you're not going to be able to string together hits with great regularity. You're not going to have these innings where you put together 4, 5, 6 hits in an inning very often. You have to be able to take free passes, because being able to have a quality offensive approach and draw walks and get on base with consistency is how you are able to mitigate when you run up against a pitcher that has good stuff. A walk and a 2-run homer can go a long way in the game today.
Very much so. Very much so. Well, moving on over to today's ball game. This was definitely a rain delay theater type game, and for me, I got to watch the entire Blackhawks game in that rain delay, which ended up working out perfectly, even though both of my teams lost today, Stephen, and it was just not a great day in Chicago sports.
What I don't get credit for the Blackhawks. The fuck?
Well, I mean, you can take some credit for the Blackhawks. Yeah, I don't know if you want to take credit for the Blackhawks right now. It's just as ugly as it is here on the south side of Chicago, talking about the baseball team. But if your guy Kevin Korchinski's back up, he's playing. It's been good. It's been good. A lot of young guys there too. 3-2 final in this one. This was a very, very winnable baseball game, Stephen. And I think this game is the one so far. It's very early in the season, but this is one that you can definitely put.
Wait, stop. I'm going to stop you right there.
Go ahead.
The legendary Hawk Harrelson used to say, you're going to win 40, you're going to lose 40. It's what you do with those other 82. I think today is definitely one of those 82.
You knew exactly where I was going with that one, but you had mentioned this earlier in the old Sox on Tap group chat. This was one of those games that you wanted to win. It was in their hands. I mean, let's just back this up. We were texting back and forth a little bit about the weather. I'm a little farther south of the ballpark. Storms came in. We knew what needed to get done. And you end that half inning there with a runner on second base. I believe that was Matt Dice who hit a double. Gets over to second base, and the skies open up. We'll talk a little bit about the tarp situation in a minute, Stephen. But in that moment, we knew you needed to get that run across home plate before the rain started. Wind was blowing out strong to right field. There was a perfect opportunity for them to tack on some runs there. Couldn't get the job done in time. You come back from the rain delay, and lo and behold, It was Cam Boozer, I believe, gives up a long bomb to left field,
Well, before
and
Cam Boozer, even though in the conclusion of that seventh inning, you know, Vargas draws the walk against Ben Joyce. So you have runners on first and second. Then he throws a wild pitch. So you got runners at second and third and
second and
one
third.
out, and you're unable to put a run across right there. Look, obviously, you know, Ben Joyce is a guy that is routinely 102, 103. So I mean, he's pumping it up there, and that's not going to be an easy at bat. But that's the difference between a good baseball team and a bad baseball team. A good baseball team finds a way to get that run across. As I was saying during our group text, needed a little bit of hashtag wild pitch offense because I wasn't confident that they were going to be able to squeak that run across right there. And of course they didn't. And, you know, this was kind of the inverse of what we saw on Thursday. They had an opportunity to take advantage and tack on a run and take a lead, and they didn't. And then
Would you go as far as to say that they were opportunistic on Thursday
I
and not
would.
opportunistic today here on Sunday?
I would definitely go as far as to say that. And then we saw what happened after that.
Ugly, ugly stuff. And I'm going to go back a little bit too in this one. I don't want to. I don't want to harp on this too much because there's going to be plenty of runway to pile on Andrew Vaughn's performance. However, he does collect his first hit in, I believe, the bottom of the ninth inning of the season. He's been brutal at the plate so far in the cleanup spot for this team throughout all three games. We'll keep it short, but Steve, give me some Andrew Vaughn thoughts.
He stinks.
There you go. We need run producers. We need guys who drive in runs, and the middle of the order can't be going 0 for 4 3 days in a row, and you expect to win ball games. It's just not going to happen. Other than that, though, Davis Martin had a hell of an outing today, Steve. This was a guy that I thought was going to be our opening day starter. He goes 6 today, gives up 2 runs, only 4 hits, only strikes out 2, but he was effective, Steve. He got the job done, kept the White Sox in the ball game. I think you'll take that any day of the week. Only 2 runs, limit the damage, and find it on cruise control. Give your team 6 innings, and you should be able to, if you want to win ball games, muster more than 2 runs. But I liked what I saw from Davis Martin today. Bryce Wilson also worked a very clean inning of work. We've seen him twice now so far this season. Steve, any thoughts on the pitching side today?
Davis Martin was good overall. Like Johnny Cannon yesterday, just need to limit the walks. 2 walks over the course of 6 innings is fine. He had some bouts of wildness last year, so just kind of need to keep that in check. If he keeps it at 3 walks per 9, he'll be okay. Again, I would also like to see a little bit more swing and miss from him. We did see a couple circumstances of that kick change that was talked about so much over the course of spring training, and just how nasty that pitch can be. It was also certainly fascinating seeing him being able to pump up 97 at a couple of times here in this ballgame today.
Unexpected.
Yeah.
But I'll take it. I'll take the little extra velocity.
Yeah.
Sox don't have a lot of power pitching right now at the major league level. Doesn't really feel like a team that's going to rear back and blow fastballs by as much as some of the teams over the past 5 years have. But Martin topping out there at 97, very unexpected.
Yeah, and so a positive start to build off of. Like I said, I think there's a couple of things to clean up a little bit, but you have to be happy overall with what you saw from him there. Overall, the pitching, obviously, they did a really good job over the course of this weekend. I mean, they gave up 5 runs in 3 games. It's you usually would win more ball games than 1 in those circumstances, but we know that the Sox are not a team that is going to score a lot of runs here. So there's going to be a lot of tight, close ball games. And unfortunately, when you do have a talent deficiency, the way that this club does, more oftentimes than not, unfortunately, you find ways to come up short in these circumstances. And that's where things like execution and situational hitting really come into play. And they weren't able to do those things today. And the Angels were able to utilize a long ball in the eighth inning to get a lead, and they were able to hold on, unfortunately.
And I'm sure we're going to have that exact same kind of conversation multiple times throughout this season as we break down
Couple through trade.
Chicago White Sox baseball. Steven, that's about all I've got from this weekend's games. But the big story today was the rain delay induced a somewhat of a calamity of sorts on the field as Roger Bossard and his crew scrambled to get the tarp on the field. They looked like they got it about, I would say, maybe 60-70% of the way on, hit a little snag, and had to improvise by using various other tarps to cover up portions of the infield, which resulted in the, I think it was 3 hours and some change minute rain delay. Interesting stuff. Have you ever seen something happen like this during a baseball game?
During a Major League Baseball game, no, but I can just kind of harken back to my experience playing in college. And I can tell you, putting a tarp on the field is not easy, particularly when you have extremely windy conditions. I have been involved in circumstances like this where getting that tarp down is extremely challenging. I didn't have it in a circumstance where I was being pelted in the head by hail and things of that nature. But I mean, we we had a circumstance one time at South Suburban when I was playing for the immortal Hall of Famer Stephen J. Ruzich, where we had about 50, 60 mile an hour winds, and we had to try to get the tarp on the field, and it blew over us to the point where we had it about 3/4 of the way onto the infield, and this giant gust of wind comes up, and the tarp ended up on the outfield fence.
Well, it becomes a sale at that point in time.
Right. 100%. So that is not an easy task out there. And I saw, I watched the post game to get the commentary from our buddy Oswaldo, who is just an absolute national treasure. And I saw him taking some people to task for calling out the sod father and making jokes about this. And Ozzy is 100% right. If there is one man in this organization that you do not criticize, it is the sod father, because nobody knows groundskeeping better than Roger motherfucking Bossard. So if he tells
Are you saying that the reports of his demise are greatly overstated?
Greatly overstated. I mean, the fact of the matter was this: the skies, it just opened up and it just started coming down. He was ready. They showed him he was in the well. Him and his crew, they were there. They were ready. And then the skies opened up. Matthew, get your head out of your ass with this bullshit, okay? The constant
this
here.
was. You see, I know you're not on X anymore, Stephen, but our guy Bez Beyond the Pen has been saying that the sod father is washed.
No, I'm going to push back against that. That is just slander, and I will not tolerate that kind of conversation right there. They were in the well. They were ready to go. And then the skies just completely open up and a torrential downpour happens. And then you get that gust of wind right there. Again, unless you have actually had to put a tarp on the field and been in that circumstance, I don't think anybody should be criticizing, of all people, Roger Bossard.
Hey, and they did play some baseball at the end of this. The Angels were not coming back into town. They had to get this one in. I know that's something that we talked about earlier this week with the weather reports that were coming out. Today was going to be potentially a disastrous day. I think we got lucky by all intents and purposes, for lack of a better term. They got
You mean intensive purposes?
Intensive purposes, if you want to call it that, but I call them intense and purposes. I had to throw that back out there because Mr. Redacted had congratulated
That's why I
me
said
on knowing
it.
that. Yes. But the end of the game happened. We didn't have a rain out. We didn't have to do any sort of scheduling nonsense, and I think that is a credit to Mr. Roger Bossard and his crew. They didn't look to be in mid-season form yet. It's still early. They're still working out the kinks and things, but I would say that wind is more responsible for what happened than lack of field crew preparation, Steve. That's just my take on it.
Those are just hashtag facts only.
Thank you. I wanted to provide some facts here. Steven, we've got your favorite team coming to town here in the AL Central.
Well,
Your
before we
favorite team
do
to
that,
hate.
are we gonna talk about the ninth inning?
We can't talk about the ninth inning. You can talk about the ninth inning. Let's do it. Let's talk about the ninth inning.
Because you go out there in that ninth inning. Who was it that got the leadoff single? I can't even remember. It's all just a haze at this point. But you get and Andrew Vaughn hits the leadoff double.
Yep.
Okay, and then Matt Tice draws a walk. So you got runners on first and second, nobody out. Kenley Jansen going back to back days.
Is this the bunt situation that came up in conversation here?
It is.
I know people aren't a fan of the bunt, but were you in favor of a bunt in that situation?
I don't know that I would have bunted. I just wouldn't have swung at the first fucking pitch.
Yeah, that was horrible. That was
he couldn't
probably the worst plate
find
approach of the day.
He couldn't find the strike zone at that point. So you're just going to go out there and you're going to swing at the first pitch. Again, hearkening back to my days 20 some years ago playing for the immortal Stephen J. Ruzich. If anybody would have fucking done that after a guy walked somebody to put runners on first and second with nobody out in the ninth inning of a one-run game, his head would have exploded. Because
I think a lot of heads across Chicagoland collectively exploded when he swung at that first pitch. Mine did.
Yeah, and justifiably, because that was just absolutely dog shit. Here, I mean, the deal is this. If you are going to swing at that pitch, okay, if you've made it up in your mind that, listen, first pitch, I am hacking, you better be swinging out of your fucking shoes to the point where either only two things happen. Either you hit it onto the fucking Ryan or you swing and miss and are down on the count 0-1. That's it. This bullshit of I'm gonna take a hack and I'm gonna pop it up to the second baseman. Fucking dog shit.
This was a problem with this ball club last year.
Yes.
A lot. A lot. And you know what? I've become sort of numb to things like this, and this was fresh wound because we're so early in the season. But I hope that Will Venable, has a different approach towards this than what we saw from Pedro Grifol. And I know that they like Miguel Vargas in the lineup and so forth, but that to me might be hey, you're riding the pine game one against Minnesota. Just send a message there.
That was really inexcusable. And look, for the people out there, and I know Ozzy talked about this in the post game about having Vargas bunt in that situation. I think most people that know me know that I am not a someone that is in favor of bunting. Generally, I think you have 27 outs. You should treat those as precious currency.
They didn't treat it with precious currency, even with him not bunting.
I understand that, and so I think if they would have had him bunt in that situation, I don't think it would have been terribly egregious because you would have had the time. If he was successful, you would have had the tying and the winning run in scoring position, and you have Kenley Jansen in that situation who has been prone to throwing wild pitches. That cutter can get in the dirt every once in a while. It wouldn't have been awful. Like I would, let me put it this way. I wouldn't have thrown my remote through the TV if they did it.
Fair enough. I wasn't a fan of bunting with Vargas in that situation. Somebody else, maybe. I just don't recall ever seeing Vargas bunt. It may have happened in the past when he's with the Sox, but I don't think it has. Just doesn't seem like a guy that's going to lay down a good bunt. That's just my thought process there. If it was, maybe a Brooks Baldwin or somebody in that situation, I would say go ahead and bunt. He's another guy that really made some people mad this weekend.
Well, I know he made one person in particular very mad this weekend.
Yes. He definitely made our guy Bez Beyond the Pen, formerly known as Sox Insane, very upset.
Well, I don't know. Is it possible that maybe he is insane once again because of this?
He could be. It could be. We'll have to work on that. We'll need some intel, some sources, and
Reach out to
we'll
multiple
we'll work on
sources.
we're working on confirmation on that one. Uh, man, just bad all around. Everything since Thursday, and uh, not fun. That ninth inning was pretty much a clusterfuck. Pretty much a
Yeah,
clusterfuck.
yeah. I mean,
It,
that
it
was
started
very.
good. It started good, but then you took the wind right out of the sails when Vargas hits that pop up.
Yeah, I mean, that was very 2024 White Sox. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, fair
Yeah,
enough.
but I guess at this point, you just flush it.
Hey, Oswaldo, your guy, said that Flush It is back, and Flush It will continue to live on in White Sox lore for a long time. I'm pretty sure.
If anybody didn't, and if you have the CHSN app, go back and watch the post game show because Ozzy just does a hilarious Will Ferrell impression from Old School. I sent it to you and Bez in the group text. I mean, I was just absolutely dying when I saw that. It's he is, like I said, just an absolute national treasure. So, Ozzy, if you are listening, and why wouldn't you be? We'd love to have you on the show. I'm just going to let you know that once
Yes,
again here in the Year of Our Lord 2025. We'd love to have you on, but you are a national treasure. Thank you for what you do.
I love that little PSA there, Steven. We would love to have Ozzie Guillen on the show. That'd be a good time. Tell me something because I don't have the CHSN app. Do they offer replays of the post game on the app? I know that CHSN is a hotly debated topic amongst fans of both Jerry Reinsdorf organizations and Blackhawks fans such as you and I, Steven. But can you go back and rewatch post games? Because I'm still rocking the antenna right now. I have not yet made the purchase of a CHSN subscription. So just
Hashtag
sell me on it.
hashtag unconfirmed. I can let you know when we wrap up this broadcast here.
There you go. That'd be awesome because that might actually uh, be worth the subscription fee to be able to go back and rewatch White Sox post game shows in case can't catch those in real time. The post game show. Glad that we have Chuck and Ozzy back. I am very
Charles was
glad.
very mad at people trying to take the Sodfather to task. I'll tell you that.
Was he?
Oh
Was he?
yeah,
He
he
must
was.
have been talking about our guy Betts.
Yeah, he was.
Although
He was.
the national media was sort of leaning in on the Chicago White Sox a little bit there today,
You know,
the tarp job. But hey, this team finds ways to make headlines, man. We said it in the season preview show.
usually not for the right ones though.
They definitely they find ways to make it into the headlines. Steven, as I was starting to go down before I tried to blow past the ninth inning there. Minnesota Twins are coming to town. I know they are one of your favorite AL Central ball clubs.
Fuck
It's
them.
gonna be
Fuck them.
it's gonna be a 1 o'clock start on Monday, a 6:40 p.m. start on Tuesday, which is the new start time for all Chicago White Sox baseball this summer. It's going to take a little bit of getting used to. And then back to another 1:10 start on Wednesday. This is going to be a tough series for fans to enjoy if you're trying to earn that dollar during the day. Steven, what do we got pitching matchup wise?
All right, so tomorrow we're going to get the White Sox debut of Martin Perez against Simeon, or excuse me, against Chris Paddock, former San Diego Padre. So be an interesting matchup. Martin Perez, also former Minnesota Twin himself, he's kind of bounced around a little bit, so we'll be interested to
Veteran
see.
White Sox pitcher of the group here.
He is the veteran within the staff. So got him going tomorrow. I'm interested in the game Tuesday night. Shane Smith, Rule 5 pick, who made the club out of spring training, Rule 5 selection from the Milwaukee Brewers. Somebody that's, again, anytime you have a Rule 5 pick that actually gets selected and makes the big league club, that's a story in perseverance because to be in the Rule 5 draft in particular, you're in a lot of ways at a crossroads in your career. And so he came to camp with this team, obviously threw the ball well. And between that and some of the injuries and other things that have happened with the likes of Drew Thorpe, he was able to earn a spot on this club and in the starting rotation. And one of the things that you may see some words, I don't know, maybe 12, 1300 at some point here over the next, 36 hours or so, is just the fact that more oftentimes than not, a Rule 5 pick is not somebody that you can really count on. For every Johan Santana out there are hundreds of guys that are Dylan Covey, that
White Sox legend
that are
Dylan
here,
Covey.
but they don't materialize into anything of significance. So while the odds are stacked against Shane Smith, it would certainly be a nice boost to see him find a way to stick with this team. And if he can just be an average major league starter, that would be a win. And it would be really nice too if he could be this year's Eric Fetty, a guy that you got
That's
off
the
of the
name.
scrap heap, were able to tweak some things and able to get functionality out of. And I think one of the big differences with Shane Smith is his youth and the potential contractual control. So again, temper the enthusiasm and the expectations with him. The percentages say that he's not going to stick, but it would be great if he did. So I know I'll be rooting for him, as I'm rooting for just about everybody that wears a Chicago White Sox uniform. If you can get found money like that out of a guy like Shane Smith, that's big for a team that is where the White Sox are right now in their competitive cycle. So we'll have him going on Tuesday, and then Wednesday.
Is there a competitive cycle for the White Sox, or is it sort of
in theory? It's theoretical.
Okay, the
really.
Theoretical competitive cycle. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
It's a theoretical thing. Whether it actually is something that becomes reality, we'll see. Maybe.
I feel like they kind of make their way up and then just like revert back down to the bottom.
I probably
they never
would
get through the full cycle.
I think I would equate it almost like it's not like a typical roller coaster that you would go on at Six Flags. I drove by Six Flags last week, so that's why this is fresh in my mind. So, it's not your typical roller coaster that you have your highs and lows, you go up, you go down. It's more like, is it called the giant drop, where you just start and then just boom?
Yes.
And then you're just immediately at the floor at 1,000,000 miles an hour. That's the White Sox.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good analogy. I like that one. The giant drop of a White Sox season.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be tuning into this Shane Smith start, Steve. I'm curious to see what we get out of him. Didn't really see him pitch much in spring training, but heard
I didn't see him throw a single pitch.
Yeah, I think I maybe caught like a couple of highlights, but that's about it. Not really familiar with his repertoire, Steven. Do you have any? Well, you said you're going to put some words together, so actually, we'll save it for that. You can find that over at ontapsportsnet.com whenever you have that ready. I'm excited to read what you have to say on Shane Smith, because I have not done a ton of research on the product that Shane Smith brings to the mound with him.
Yeah, and then we're going to get round 2 through the rotation. We're going to get Sean Burke on Wednesday afternoon, going up against a much more formidable opponent than that of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim of Orange County of the Pacific time zone. The Twins, they obviously, everybody knows my hatred for them. I want all the bad things in baseball to happen to them. They've been making me a miserable human being for about 25 years now, for the most part. And I wish nothing but bad things.
They've won so many championships over that time too.
Well, granted, I take tremendous joy in their misfortunes. And, I think about
They're your favorite team to hate.
I think about them, and I think about our friend Theodore, who just has such an obsession with the Sox, and I think about all the pain and agony that he goes through, and it warms my heart a lot. And so, nothing would make me happier than to see the Sox find a way to win a series against this team. I am not optimistic about it, if I'm being honest. But that's going to be an interesting test for Sean Burke against a much more capable offense.
How do you see this series going, Steve? Let's get to predictions.
Just because I'm an optimist, I'm going to say the Sox find a way to win one.
Find a way to win one. That's where I was going with this one as well. They did squeak one out here. Well, not even squeak one out against the Angels. They dominated in that baseball game. And then, we got what we got for the final two. I think you get another offensive outburst at some point here in this Minnesota Twins series. It'd be interesting to see if it comes in one of these 1:00 games and if that's a trend. Maybe Will Venable's team is ready to kick ass in earlier hours than Pedro Griffol's team. Could that be a storyline? We'll have to find out.
Well, although technically, didn't they kick ass, in the late afternoon hours on
Late
Thursday?
afternoon hours. So maybe we're gonna have to, I don't think we get many 3:00 starts.
No, that's usually reserved for
Many
a
3:00 starts.
Saturday.
Yeah.
So
We'll have
we'll have to take what we can get.
Yeah, that's just the name of the game here. Yeah, I'm gonna go 1 and 2 in this series as well, Steve. So I'm gonna ride with you on that. Any final thoughts before we close up shop today?
Final thoughts. Just I'm going to speak in generalities here. I was sitting on my couch watching baseball for about 7.5 hours today before we hopped on these airwaves here. It's always good when you can just sit on the couch and enjoy just baseball for hours and hours and hours. Having big inning back in our
Big
lives.
inning. Big inning.
That's a great thing. Hashtag praise Manfred. We are truly hashtag blessed to have this, and it's good just to have baseball back in our lives on a daily basis, even if it does ultimately make us miserable.
It is good to have baseball back in our lives. I also consumed a good amount of big inning this weekend. Was very happy to have that. I will say one thing about big inning: too many commercials. It felt like it was every 3 minutes yesterday. We're going to commercial break. We got guys on third base in the middle of pitches, and we're breaking every time they come in. We're going to break the commercial now. Oh man, that was frustrating. So I want a commercial free hour. That's what I want. Where can we get the commercial free hour? That's what we need.
It's almost like they should have had spring training for big inning.
Yeah, they should have.
Because they're not in mid-season form right now.
They're not. The cuts were weird. There's a couple things. It's not that I didn't enjoy big inning. I'm not saying that big inning is a bad product. I'm just saying I want big inning to stay on the entire time.
We want it to be crisp.
Yes, that's what we want. And they were moving the things around a little too much. Sometimes we had 2 screens. Sometimes we had 3. Sometimes we had 4. The games are on. Leave them on. If I say this, Steve, if a game's going to commercial, just play the commercial in that one box. Don't cut the whole thing to commercial. Just let commercials run when the games are going to commercial. If you need to switch back and forth around there, that's fine. But if something interesting's going on, I don't want to go to a complete commercial break and come back and have to go to my phone to figure out what happened somewhere in St. Louis or Minnesota or wherever, is out there. But I saw you were consuming more big inning today. Can't wait for more big inning throughout the next, what do we got here? 4 or 5 months, 6 months.
I mean, we got 159 more of these.
Yeah. Beautiful that baseball is back, Steven. My final thoughts are Thursday was fun. It was great to get to the ballpark. Concourse still smelled amazing. I can't wait to get back into Lot B though. No more Lot L for me. It's gonna be a thing. No more Lot L. Don't want to have to park that far away. Steven, excellent show. We'll be back sometime this week. Cheers, Steve. White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.